Imagine archaeologists uncover an ancient pipe buried underground. At first, it doesn't seem special, just another old artifact. But when scientists examine what's inside, they discover something shocking. The pipe contains traces of tobacco, and not just a few hundred years old, not 1,000 years old, thousands upon thousands of years old, which raises a strange question. If smoking is often seen as a modern habit, why were people doing it before the pyramids existed? Who taught them? And how did they discover it in the first place? The answer takes us back to a time when humanity was still trying to figure out the world around them. And it all starts with a campfire. Nobody knows exactly when humans started smoking. There isn't a history book that tells us. No ancient diary, no written record. But most experts believe it began thousands of years ago by accident. Think about life back then. Ancient humans spent much of their lives around fire. Fire cooked food, provided warmth, kept dangerous animals away. People were constantly burning wood, leaves, and plants. Eventually, someone noticed something strange. Certain plants produced unusual smoke. Some smelled stronger. Some made people feel different. Maybe someone tossed a plant into the fire. Maybe they inhaled the smoke without meaning to. Maybe they liked the effect. And maybe they tried it again. That tiny moment of curiosity may have started one of humanity's oldest habits. But ancient smoking wasn't about addiction. It was about something much stranger. To many ancient cultures, smoke wasn't just smoke. It was a bridge, a connection between humans and something greater. Many early societies believed smoke carried prayers into the sky. When smoke rose upward, it symbolized communication with gods, spirits, or ancestors. That's why smoking often became part of ceremonies. Not entertainment, not recreation, religion. Imagine standing around a fire thousands of years ago. The night sky above you, smoke rising into the darkness, people chanting, praying, performing rituals. For ancient people, smoking wasn't a bad habit. It was sacred. But one particular plant would soon become more important than all the others. And that plant was tobacco. Tobacco wasn't the only plant ancient people burned, but it was different, very different. The plant contains nicotine. Ancient people didn't know what nicotine was, but they knew something happened when tobacco was used. People felt calmer, more alert, sometimes even energized. Over generations, tobacco became deeply connected to spiritual practices. Some groups believed it held special powers. Others treated it as a gift from the natural world. Eventually, tobacco became one of the most respected plants in many ancient communities. But here's the crazy part. For thousands of years, most of the world had never even heard of it. Entire civilizations existed without knowing tobacco was real. That would eventually change. And when it did, history would never be the same. For a long time, historians thought smoking began relatively recently. Then archaeologists found something unexpected, ancient smoking pipes. And these weren't decorative objects. Scientists analyzed residue trapped inside them. The results were surprising. Some contained evidence of tobacco use dating back thousands of years. That discovery forced researchers to rethink what they knew about smoking. Because if people were using tobacco that long ago, it means knowledge about the plant survived for countless generations. Think about that. No internet, no books, no schools, yet information about tobacco traveled across centuries. Parents taught children, elders taught communities. Entire traditions survived simply because people remembered them. And that's actually one of the most impressive parts of the story. The plant wasn't important because it was addictive. It was important because ancient people believed it mattered. But tobacco wasn't the only thing people smoked. And what some cultures smoked next was even stranger. Ancient people experimented with all kinds of plants, not just tobacco. Different cultures around the world burned herbs, roots, tree bark, and other natural materials. Some were used for ceremonies. Some were believed to have healing properties. Others were used during important religious events. To modern people, smoking often seems connected to cigarettes. But ancient smoking looked completely different. There were no cigarette packs, no advertisements, no companies, no warning labels. Smoking was often part of culture itself. A ritual, a tradition, a symbol. In some communities, smoking marked important life events. In others, it was used during negotiations, ceremonies, or spiritual gatherings. The meaning mattered more than the smoke. But that would eventually change. Because one day, tobacco would leave the Americas. And once it did, the world would never be the same. Everything changed when European explorers arrived in the Americas. What they found surprised them. People were intentionally inhaling smoke, blowing it through their mouths, sometimes even through their noses. To Europeans, it looked bizarre. Some thought it was strange. Others were fascinated. But curiosity is powerful. Soon explorers carried tobacco back across the Atlantic Ocean. Nobody realized what was about to happen. The plant that had been used by ancient peoples for thousands of years was about to spread across the planet, and demand exploded. Within a surprisingly short time, tobacco was everywhere. Kings used it, merchants sold it, farmers grew it, doctors even recommended it. Yes, doctors. Today that sounds ridiculous. But centuries ago, some people believed tobacco could actually improve health. One of the people who absolutely hated tobacco was King James I of England. He thought smoking was disgusting. In fact, he became so frustrated that he wrote a public attack against tobacco. Imagine being so annoyed by a habit that you write an entire book about it. But there was a problem. People didn't want to stop. The more tobacco spread, the more money it generated. Governments loved taxing it. Merchants loved selling it. And consumers kept buying it. It was one of the first examples of a product becoming so popular that even powerful leaders struggled to slow it down. The plant had become bigger than any one king, and its influence was only growing. As smoking spread, governments discovered something else. Tobacco generated huge amounts of money. Taxes poured in. Trade expanded. Entire industries formed around a single plant. The ancient ritual was becoming big business, and business was changing everything. What started beside ancient fires had become a worldwide habit. Factories eventually mass-produced cigarettes. Advertisements appeared everywhere. Movie stars smoked. Athletes smoked. Millions of people joined in. The sacred plant used by ancient cultures had transformed into one of the biggest industries on Earth. But over time, scientists uncovered serious health risks. The public slowly began changing its view of smoking. What was once respected became controversial, and the debate continues even today. So when did ancient people start smoking? The truth is nobody knows the exact day, but evidence suggests humans were experimenting with smoke thousands of years ago, long before modern countries, long before written history, long before anyone could have imagined what smoking would become. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. One small act of curiosity around a campfire may have triggered a chain reaction that lasted thousands of years. Ancient people couldn't have known it, but the smoke rising from those early fires would eventually change the world. Think about that. The first people who experimented with smoke weren't trying to build industries. They weren't trying to create global trade. They weren't trying to change history. They were simply curious. And yet thousands of years later, that curiosity would influence cultures, economies, governments, medicine, religion, and billions of lives around the world. All because someone, somewhere, looked at a burning plant and wondered what would happen next. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more strange historical mysteries that still shape our lives today.